In the early 20th century, a 23-year-old man traveled to Central and South America in hopes of expanding his sphere of knowledge in politics. Over 4 years, all he witnessed was the injustice done to his people simply because they were black, and he began to stray away from politics and delve into this new issue he saw. At 27, he read Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery, which sparked questions in his head. Where is the black man's government? Where are his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, and his ambassador, his army, his navy, his men of big affairs? At this moment, the father of black nationalism was born, and his name was Marcus Garvey.
No one remember old Marcus Garvey. No one remember old Marcus Garvey. No one remember old Marcus Garvey.
On the 17th of August in the year 1887, Marcus Garvey was born to a stonemason father and a mother who was a household servant in St. Anne, Jamaica. He grew up and went to school with black and white children, but at the age of 14, he was separated from his white counterparts and forced out of school due to restrictions in the Jamaican education system. He began to work full-time as a printer's apprentice, where he gained knowledge of literature and writing. Here he showed a glimpse into his future of activism as he became involved in the labor union for print tradesmen at the age of 19. 2 years later, he led a strike for higher salaries for printers. After experiencing this injustice done to black people in Jamaica, Marcus Garvey went to Central and South America to see if the same was being done in other parts of the world. After 2 years, he expanded his range of observation and traveled to Europe, most notably London, where he attended the University of London's Birkbeck College and studied philosophy and law, but his conclusion was the same.
Marcus Garvey found wherever he went, black people of the African heritage in particular were always on the lower stratification end of society. This had a profound impact on him. Particularly, his concern was for the uplift of African people globally.
After 2 years in London, Marcus Garvey returned to Jamaica, where he began the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or the UNIA. With the founding of this union, he wrote a set of objectives that he wished to achieve. These include establishing a universal confraternity among the race, promoting the spirit of race pride and love, reclaiming the fallen of the African race, administering to and assisting the needy, assisting in civilizing the backward tribes of Africa, strengthening the imperialism of independent African states, and establishing commissionaries or agencies in the principal countries of the world for the protection of all Negroes, irrespective of nationality. However, the UNIA never grew popular in Jamaica, and upon invitation from his idol, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey moved to New York in 1916 to learn more about the state of African Americans and to propose his idea of the UNIA to them. The following year, riots broke out in East St. Louis, where a labor dispute erupted and whites began attacking African Americans, leaving at least 40 dead. Around this time, the First World War was coming to a close, and it grew evident to African Americans that although they fought for their country, they still would not be granted the same rights and liberties as their white counterparts. These events convinced Garvey that integration would never occur and that there would never be mutual respect between whites and blacks unless African Americans showed success economically, politically, and culturally on their own accord. With these goals in mind, he launched a branch of the UNIA in Harlem. People latched onto his idea of Africa for the Africans and the unity of African descendants all over the globe. In 1918, Marcus Garvey started a newspaper called The Negro World, and the following year, he bought an auditorium where he would host his public gatherings. He had reached the peak of his career, and in his article, The Negro's Greatest Enemy, he claimed to have had 4 million followers. Although likely inflated, there is no doubt that many were impacted by his ideals. In an attempt to further African American economic independence, Marcus Garvey established the Negroes Factory Association and a shipping company, Black Star Line, in 1919. He planned to use this shipping company to promote trade around the globe, but he also planned to use it to transport African Americans back to the motherland. Marcus Garvey was a poor businessman, and he often appointed loyalists with no experience to key positions. This, coupled with an ongoing investigation orchestrated by J. Edgar Hoover, made Marcus Garvey's demise inevitable. However, he pushed through and in 1920 held a month-long convention in both his Liberty Hall and the Madison Square Garden. Thousands of delegates from 22 different nations gathered and were given titles from Marcus Garvey. Garvey proclaimed himself to be the President of Africa, and it was here that he wrote the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World, mimicking the Declaration of Independence. In this declaration, he and other members of the UNIA denounced the colonization of Africa by European countries and strongly suggested that the League of Nations should return the colonies. Marcus Garvey also used his shipping company to send delegates to Liberia to begin setting up a utopian society where all black people could settle. Unfortunately, his business was cut short as in 1922, J. Edgar Hoover and the U.S. government arrested Garvey on counts of mail fraud as he solicited funds from investors for his failing shipping company. Out on bail and awaiting trial, Marcus Garvey wrote in his newspaper an entry titled "Return to Africa," where he urged his members to do all they can to spread black nationalism. He focused on the aim of moving a large population of the African American community back to Africa. Although his situation seemingly grew worse and worse, he never lost hope and stated that it would only be a matter of time before Africa was completely colonized by all people of African descent. Contrary to his desire, not one of Marcus Garvey's ships ever ported in Africa, and a year later he was jailed once again. It was in this jail where he wrote his most extensive autobiographical statement titled "The Negro's Greatest Enemy," where he gives a background of his life and his achievements before angrily blaming other black activists for his failures. The tone of this statement tells us that Marcus Garvey knew that this was the beginning of the end of his efforts in America. 2.5 years into his 5-year sentence, Marcus Garvey was pardoned by President Calvin Coolidge for the sole purpose of deporting him back to Jamaica. Marcus Garvey obtained a hero send-off in New Orleans and a warm welcome in Jamaica before starting a family and moving to London. After a few years of activism in England, Marcus Garvey died in 1940 due to severe strokes. During his illustrious career, Marcus Garvey faced a lot of backlash from his community as he would agree with whites that advocated for the sending of African Americans back to Africa. Most notably, he met with the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan to discuss his views on social equality and separatism. He thought it would benefit his goal of reuniting all those of African descent by working together with another segregationist, but his ideas backfired. Other highly esteemed African American leaders, such as W.E.B. Du Bois, James Weldon, Chandler Owen, and A. Philip Randolph, had doubts about Marcus Garvey and showed disapproval of his program. In 1923, a group of prominent African American intellectuals mailed Harry M. Daugherty, the United States Attorney General, asking them to continue their prosecution of Marcus Garvey and to investigate some of the members of the UNIA. In 1924, W.E.B. Du Bois publicly criticized Garvey, calling him the most dangerous enemy of the Negro race, and insulted him, describing him as a little fat, black, ugly man with a big head. This backlash contributed to his lack of popularity during the early 20th century. Despite his controversies, Marcus Garvey left a lasting effect in the United States and beyond. His philosophies of black nationalism and Pan-Africanism came during the Jim Crow era, when life was harder just because you were black, and when groups such as the KKK would terrorize African Americans. He broke the boundaries of the social structure, encouraging people of African descent to be proud in their skin. He taught black people to be self-reliant, and he emphasized unity among African Americans. He set the foundation for uprisings such as the Black Power movement of the 1960s and 70s, which emphasized racial pride and economic empowerment during the Civil Rights Movement. The parents of famous civil rights leader Malcolm X were involved in the UNIA, and he himself adopted many of the views of Garveyism.